Welcome everyone to our Zoom session today, maximizing the sales pipeline. And today's going to be a discussion around some critical issues, challenges, and insights. Um, my name again is Mark Ondash. I'm a sales enablement professional, and I have with me today two wonderful guests. I have Gary Smith of the Gary Smith Partnership. Gary is, 20 plus years in sales and marketing, and his group provides custom Salesforce apps that help you drive revenue, enhance usability, and streamline business processes. Around consultancy services, marketing automation, Salesforce support, and Gary has a ton of information on sales pipeline, and we could talk forever. So we're gonna have to keep them railed in. Gary, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, John. Looking forward to it.
And then
Mark?
John White is here from AchieveNEXT, and John's got 20 plus years as well as in sales and marketing. And he's a sales and marketing strategist, business development professional. John's mainly working as AchieveNEXT business relationship training. So that's what he is the business director of. John is in Philadelphia. Gary, of course, is in the UK. Did I get that close to right, everyone?
Yes.
That works for me. I'm glad.
Okay,
Well, I am
excellent.
in Philadelphia, so you're halfway. You're good. You're good there.
We're halfway there. Good. So
Yes.
the impetus for this discussion and was again, have done a significant amount of work recently in my last role and recently in general around sales pipelines, right? And some of the things again that I saw were, how do you identify true opportunities, right? How do you get a clear picture of your stages, probabilities, because that can be ambiguous, and more importantly, how does this allow you to forecast accurately, right? So if you have a pipeline that is cleaned up, that's accurate, that there's a process around, that people use correctly, you're able to coach to it. Then everyone knows what's in it because it's very transparent. And I think another piece of it is that if it's again cleaned up and maintained, to use those terms, I think it allows some insight into some of the skills or gaps that people have, because let's say they have a significant amount of their pipeline in kind of the negotiation stage, but the duration of that stage is huge. What's that telling us, telling a coach, right, in terms of how they can remedy that? So I think from an insights standpoint, it's enormous. So I'll try to throw again Mark Ondash, introduce myself earlier, as you know, former global training manager. And our topics though are, what are some of the challenges that we can discuss for chief revenue officers and coaches around, sales pipelines? Again, I know this can be a significantly wide discussion, but we'll try to keep it to that. And John, I'll start with you, given your experience. If there's anything on top of mind for you that comes up, whether it's qualitatively or quantitatively around what you see being an issue or challenge.
Well, I look, and thanks for the intro, Mark. What I look for in a pipeline is the definition of an opportunity. What qualifies as an opportunity to be in the pipeline. Because ultimately, I think sometimes an opportunity is thought of as an opportunity when it's really just somebody, looking for information. And if they're looking for information, are they just, kicking the opportunity down the road, or is it legitimately somebody who has a problem that you are able to solve with whatever product and service that you have? So, and the other thing I also think of is, how many stages are in the sales process? There's, depending upon where you look, there can be anywhere from 5 to 7 to even more stages in the pipeline. So each one of them has to be looked at as, where are the opportunities that you have that are legitimate? Where are they stalling, if they are stalling? And you had just mentioned negotiation. If it's stalling in negotiation, as a sales enablement professional, that's where you need to focus some of your efforts.
So your focus right now is kind of questioning on the top of the sales funnel. Hey, what's going in there? Is it really, an opportunity? And the question I might have, and then for Gary would be, hey, how do you rate them? I know there's a system you can use. There's the BANT and the ANIM acronyms in terms of how you, the criteria you use. But Gary, how about you on that? What do you think?
Well, I think John's right. A lot of the companies that we start working with, there's a lot of ambiguity. between the opportunity stages that companies have got configured in their CRM system or the Salesforce automation system. And quite often you see there's overlap between the stages. Certainly amongst the sales team, there's a lack of clarity. There's ambiguity about which of those what those different stages mean.
Right.
You have to crystallize that. If you want accurate pipeline visibility, if you want reliable sales forecasts, you have to be clear about what each of those stages mean. In your example of negotiation, I think you're right. And I mean, so many pipelines that you look at are way over inflated in terms of the actual tangible deals that still have legs. And I would say if you've got deals that are in negotiation too long, probably many of those opportunities, they skip the early stages. They didn't skip them, but they certainly went very quickly through the sort of things that John was talking about, which are qualification, needs analysis, and so on. And then they end up spending a ton of time in negotiation because really, do those deals really still have legs? So some of it is about clearing up ambiguity in the stages. Some of it is about making sure opportunities spend the right amount of time in each stage, combined with having the right analysis of what's going on in your pipeline.
Interesting. That makes me think that I had a question earlier. Does your sales process drive how you use your CRM, or does your CRM drive your sales process? Right. For your sales pipeline, because if you buy something out of the box and it says, well, these are the stages that we have configured, and do they match up or mirror your buyer's stages easily? I don't know if that's an issue or challenge either one of you have come up to see.
I mean, the CRM system ideally would match the customer buying process, not the sales stages or even what comes pre-configured with the system. The challenge with that is obviously every customer's buying process is different to a certain extent. So you absolutely should configure the stages that you find in any CRM system. I mean, we work extensively with Salesforce. The stages that you get out of the box, I've been deploying Salesforce since 2003, and the stages that you get out of the box haven't changed one little bit in that time.
That's what
and yet, the intellect, the thinking about sales processes definitely has changed in that time. So you should configure it, and you should also configure it, Mark, in terms of, you might have one set of stages that relates to new customers, a different set of stages that relates to existing customers or renewals or however your business works. So yes, you should do that. But as I say, it's essential to be clear about what each of those stages means and what the exit criteria are for moving from one stage to the next.
So for instance, let's say you have something here's an interesting one. Let's say like rules that should be in place, right? Let's say you have something that's over 90 days on your pipeline and you haven't touched it in 30 days. Maybe that should be moved to the closed bin, so to speak, and of course it depends on industry, right? And sales cycle length and all those types of things. What about cleanup activities, John? If you think about it, in your experience, how often, and Gary, I certainly asked this too for you as well, how often do salespeople engage in pipeline cleanup? Is it just before the meeting with their manager, or is it on a quarter,
or is it ongoing,
right?
Or is it never?
Pardon me. Sorry about that. I'm such a popular person, I suppose. It's either that or I'm getting a rate reduction on my credit cards.
Ooh, okay. We'll take that.
So no, I think the thing about the CRM, Mark and Gary, you said something right there about the buying process. I am such a huge believer, because that's right now where we are, is the buying process must be understood in order for the sales process to align. You have to do that. But to answer your question, I think most sales reps will fall into the former, which is they are going to clean up right before the meeting. And again, it's because it doesn't make them bad people. It's just they have a lot on their plate, and the CRM doesn't always fit into it at the time. So The other thing I think is that when it comes to the CRM, so many companies use it incorrectly. So many companies use it as a giant Rolodex. They
Right,
use
right.
it. They use it to put information in there that does not really need to be in there. And then, when it comes to managing the pipeline, that's really what the CRM, that's where it earns its stripes. So you have to have, and Gary's right, you have to have it, you have to understand exactly which stages there are, and everybody has to have a consensus around that. Because if there are differing uh, views on how the CRM and the pipeline are viewed, it's not going to work. You're just going to have a lot of information and a lot of questions around it.
I think you're right, John, and I would actually contend that in many cases, that cleanup of the pipeline doesn't happen an hour before the meeting with the manager. It doesn't happen at all. And that's because, and actually, no, in some regards, everybody is under pressure about pipeline size. The board want to know that the pipeline is big enough to hit the target next month, next quarter, the rest of this year. And you don't relieve that pressure by taking deals that no longer have legs, dormant deals. You don't relieve that pressure by taking them out of the pipeline. And salespeople are optimistic. Oh, it's bound to close one day. And that's why you see deals. Let's say your average sales cycle is 3 months. That's why you see deals that are a year old. It's just, a lot of it is just wishful thinking. I accept there are sometimes deals that where the average is 3 months, they do take 12 months. I kind of accept that, but the majority don't. And that's why the average is 3 months. So I think in a lot of cases, there isn't the rigor of management review and action, because the CRM system is a tool. The CRM system does not actually tell you the answers. What the CRM system does is it tells you what questions to ask. So as a manager, you can look at deals. Is this deal really going to close? We know the average sales cycle is 3 months. This deal's been open a year. The close date, the date we thought the opportunity was going to close, it's slipped 5 times already. It's 90 days since the stage was last updated. Mark, are you seriously telling me this deal's going to close this month?
Yes.
There's not the management discipline to use the system to partly to manage by exception, but also to review the pipeline in a rigorous way. And there's a bunch of reasons for that.
And I think that's a very good point. That's what I discovered in my own research as well, Gary, which really leads to, okay, this is a behavioral issue. I mean, I understand salespeople. Well, I've been in sales. You guys have all been in sales for a long time. We understand what it's like, that we don't want to get bogged down with doing all the minutia and little things that are important. We want to go see people and engage, right? And make an impact and make things happen. How do you set up a simple but, again, rigorous process to ensure that um, the pipelines are clean, right, and transparent? Is it, so, in fact, who does that? I think more importantly, right? So this is one of the points that I brought up in my mini webinar, was the fact that lots of times your chief revenue officer, your national sales manager is probably not going to do that, because they're not living in those weeds. They may or may not be. Maybe frontline managers have more pain when it comes to dealing with the reps than executive. It's probably not up to your CRM administrator to be able to do that. So maybe there should be an air traffic controller that works alongside. That maybe is an in between. What is that? What do you think of that? Is that foolish, or is that something that would be?
I think it is the job of the VP of sales or the regional heads or whatever, because they're the ones that are responsible for an accurate sales forecast. They're the people that the board is looking to for reliability in the sales forecast, and to be able to answer the question of, do we have enough pipeline to meet next month's target? If yes, great. If not, what are we going to do about it?
Why not?
Now, that does not mean that they have to go through every single deal one by one looking at the metrics on that deal. Far from
Right.
it. What you do is you configure the reports to give the summary information, so that if you've got a deal that's due to close, we're in early May now. If you've got $1 million worth of pipeline due to close in May, and it's still at the prospecting stage, as the VP of sales, I'd want to be able to drill into that number because it catches my eye.
Right.
Really, are those deals going to get through the sales cycle this month? I'd want to be able to go in there, see whether it's one deal or whether it's half a dozen deals. I'd be able to want to spot check one of those deals if it's half a dozen deals, look at that deal and say, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I get that. I'm prepared. It's an existing customer, whatever. So to a certain extent, you manage by exception, but you have to summarize up the information in a way that you can be confident that when you look at that summary of deals, in which stage are they in and when are they going to close, it kind of looks like it makes sense. You don't have a disproportionate number of deals in the early stages that are due to close in May. And I think to answer your point, Mark, if the people who are, I personally don't agree with the kind of air traffic controller or sales operations person. They would assist. It's quite common, I would say, for the sales operations person to be creating these reports, fine-tuning them. But ultimately, it's the VP of sales who's responsible for it.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to have the information that helps them to get there.
Okay, makes sense. John, anything to add on that from your standpoint?
Yeah, I think what you need to do when it comes to the pipeline is understand where your, for forecasting, of course, where are the majority of your opportunities? If you have 75% of your opportunities are in Discover, it's not good. And if that's the same thing week after week, or I'm sorry, month after month or quarter after quarter, you have to understand, why is that a challenge with how we are defining an opportunity, or is that really where they all are? And I agree. I don't think it's the role of an air traffic controller, because I think they are, for the most part, if I'm understanding correctly, they're data gatherers. They're not, they don't know the nuts and bolts of an opportunity to understand and say, well, this is how it's going to be as I report it. They can only report what the information that's in that CRM. So I think it goes down to how many stages, what is the definition of each stage, and then understanding, I know that this has been in the past where they have percentages of close. I don't know the difference between a 40% chance of close and a 35% chance of close and a 30% chance of close. And that's where, again, you have to really have some hard and fast rules around opportunities and pipeline to make sure that if the information is in there, it's got to have some truth serum around it.
Yeah, because right. Forgive me. If everyone's not playing, in the same field by the same rules, then of course the measurements don't really, wash out correctly, do they?
You make an interesting point, John, about the percentages, because most companies, in my experience, they don't use percentages and opportunities very well. They tend to take a default value, percentage probability of closing that's associated with each of the stages. It gets set up at the beginning and then never looked at again. And if you look at each individual opportunity, they never get adjusted. Whereas actually most CRM systems, and Salesforce for sure, you can modify the probability. And I accept, is it 35% or 40%? Well, kind of, who really knows? We have one of our customers, one of the stages is 50% probability. And he insists that you change the probability. You either change it to 49 or 51. Because he says, I get the fact that, it's hard to tell. It's about a 50% chance. I want to know which side of the fence you're on. And he insists that the sales guys change it to either 49 or 51% based on what they think. Which is actually quite a compelling way of getting people to focus on the deals that they think are most likely to close. But the probability is an important topic. And we can spend 30 minutes talking about the probability, because I think the whole concept of weighted pipeline is underused. We know you're not going to win every deal. I know that. But so how do you get a reliable forecast? Well, what happens in most companies is the finance director says, oh, it's $1 million of pipeline. I'll just lop off 40% of that because I know that's going to close everything. Using accurate, reliable probabilities on each of the stages does give you an expected revenue, which is a reasonably statistic. It's a dependable mechanism for a VP of sales to say to the board, this is my forecast and this is how I've calculated this number.
Gary, that's such an interesting point because I lived that on the other side of the equation as I was working with a vendor, trying to build a incentive compensation system for an organization, right? And the original cost and price point started here, and then as we moved on, it ended up here coming down. So just how often do the reps go in and say, well, we got 750,000 on for this particular deal, and now it's we had to give them some incentives, and we're at 645 now, and suddenly that whole pipeline begins to change, which also again could show from a negotiation standpoint how much you're giving away when you shouldn't, or maybe too
Yes.
early. That's an interesting metric as well. And then I was looking at my notes, and one of the things that came up to me was, and again, we could talk forever about metrics, so we could go for at least another afternoon on that, but was around when to use the win rate versus, say, the pipeline conversion rate. Yeah, so there were two, right? There was the win rate versus the close rate, and what I found in my research was that if the pipeline is squeaky clean, it makes sense to use the win rate. But if the pipeline is the criteria is kind of buttoned up, you use the close rate. Again, I don't know if
How are you defining the win rate there, Mark?
well, the win rate, as I saw, was simply the won over the lost over a period of time, right? And the let's see, the close rate was simply your won over all your opportunities.
My personal view is it never makes sense to do the latter, because the way we manage the conversion, whether you call it the close rate, the win rate, is if you take a period of time, whether it's a month or a quarter, how many deals did we win? So we won 3 deals and we lost 7 deals. My win rate by number is therefore 30%.
Right.
If the value of the won deals was $40,000 and the value of the lost deals was $60,000, my win rate by value is 40%. So I'm closing a high proportion of higher valued deals. The problem with, and I think that provides an accurate way to measure salesperson, whether you call it win rates or whatever. If you factor in the size of the pipeline, supposing I've won 4 deals, well, I had a great month in opening with pipeline creation, opening new deals. So kind of how does that factor in?
Right.
It's a completely moving feast. So I would say strictly over a specific period of time, whether it's a year, a quarter, a month, what's the ratio of won deals to lost deals by number? You should do it by number and by value. Because everything else, you're just kind of muddying the water, really.
Okay, excellent. Appreciate it.
Incidentally, this is one of my pet topics. You look at many organizations, you see the win rate's 50, 60, 70% based on that metric. So either that company has got one of the best sales teams in the United States at the moment, or the pipeline's overinflated. Or one other possibility, deals are not getting entered into the pipeline in the system until the sales rep is pretty damn confident a deal is going to be done. So actually, realistically, we're already well through the sales process before the deals get entered. That's one scenario. Sandbagging.
Another good point, and John, I don't know if you experienced that. I did. Where I was one of the things that I had uncovered that by territories, quite frankly, by region, you had one region that was only entering deals or opportunities that had a huge potential of closing. So their pipeline was very small, and their win rate and conversion rate was, as a result, huge. Versus other regions that were just throwing everything, at the wall and entering everything just to have an enormous pipeline to carry around, which in itself is certainly some issues.
Well, that's kind of where I was saying early on is how do you define an opportunity? I mean, you have sales reps are poker players in a lot of ways. They're going to keep their cards close to the vest. They don't want to, because what happens is when you talk about an opportunity that you think really, really good about, but you can't get into the mind of your buyer. You may try, but you just don't know. So are you going to put out, like Gary said, are you going to put out this opportunity that you think is good, but you're not really sure, versus one that you are just right on? Because if you go out there, you're going to get questioned. What happened with so and so? You told us that was going to come in. What happened with so and so? And before you know it, your pipeline is getting questioned. So you have to be. That's where I say, is an opportunity, or is an opportunity just interest?
Right. And it could depend again upon industry and certainly.
And Mark, if as long as everybody in the company is doing the same thing,
Right.
arguably it doesn't matter, because you've got consistency. When you look at the pipeline, you understand what it is. It's when some people are doing one thing, and even within the same region, and somebody else is doing something, that's when you can't trust the reports. And and John's absolutely right. You have to look at the behavior of the management team, because if I can think of a company where in the UK we would call it a judicial review. You lose a deal, I'm going to appoint a high court judge to investigate how come you lost the deal. So it's a lot of this behavior. But it sounds like we're having a bit of a go at sales reps. We're not. A lot of it is driven by management behavior.
Well, and if I can jump in there, the other thing is, when you're looking at it from a finance standpoint, finance is looking into the future. Finance job is to predict what is going to happen in the future. So let's say you have an opportunity that wasn't in the pipeline that comes in, and all of a sudden it is a great opportunity. Now, this doesn't happen too much, I would imagine, but let's say it did. That really, it just ramps everything up. Well, if you're finance, that's not a great thing, because all of a sudden now you're against the wall. You've got to upstaff. You've got to bring people in to take this great opportunity that came in that you had no idea was there. So you have to, it's really organizational to say, what define that opportunity, define what is, where it is in the pipeline, and have those KPIs, and have them across the board, and hold people to it. I agree. We're not bashing on sales reps. Quite the opposite. Sales reps want to come in with, it's in their best interest to have a good, solid pipeline of opportunities.
Right.
It's ultimately defining what an opportunity is, so that they can come in and say with some clarity, this is what I have, and this is what I can predict, and everyone will agree on that.
Gentlemen, I have. We got some time left. Forgive me. So as we kind of wind down, again in our discussion, and I'd like to say, we've covered a number of topics, but so what advice would you then give? If you could put it into a couple words in terms of, hey, here's how I tend to look at this. And for chief revenue officers and VPs of sales out there, and I'll start with you, Gary. What would you, if you can provide some advice, what would you say?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to get a correct set of reports and dashboards set up. So that if you take Salesforce.com, for example, the out-of-the-box reports and dashboards are not that great. You have to build your own reports and dashboards. Right. So you need to get a setup, it doesn't need to be a vast suite of dashboards, but you need the dashboards that allow you to measure the size of the funnel, the quality of the funnel, and the trend in the funnel. If you want to get it for free, if you Google GSP sales dashboard, and you're using Salesforce.com, there is a free dashboard that you can get, which we pre-built 12 reports that will give you those things: the size, the quality, and the trend in the pipeline. So feel free to avail of that. So that's the first thing: get a proper set of reports and dashboards set up. And the second thing is actually coach managers on how to use them. Just because somebody's a sales manager or a VP of sales, that does not inherently, they're probably very good salespeople, they're probably very good deal coaches, but that doesn't mean to say they know how to use a set of reports to understand the quality of the funnel, the trend in the funnel, and so on, and the pipeline coverage, that thing about comparing the pipeline with the target. So do those things, get yourself a set of reports and dashboards, and teach people how to use them.
Pretty simple, quite frankly.
Hmm.
Thank you, Gary. John, how about yourself? Anything that you want to add?
Well, you used the word right there that I was going to touch on is simple. Is keep things, especially when it revolves around the CRM. Just keep it simple. Sales reps are not by nature data entry people. They are they are type A, competitors. They are not ones to sit in front of the computer and add data every day. So if you want data, keep the data simple. Make sure that what you're asking them to do is not going to take them away from what it is that you hired them to do, and that is to sell and drive revenue. So, and then again, I agree 100% with Gary. They need to know where they stand at all times. So have those dashboards set up so that it speaks to them every day. I remember when I was a young rep, I used to come in, we had a flash report every morning, and every rep went over to that flash report like it was, the ticker at the,
Right.
at the stock market. You went there because you needed to know where you were at that day. So keep the report simple, keep the CRM simple, and make sure that everybody is held to the same standard. That way you're going to have better information so that you can make the decisions and the organization can make the decision, which is exactly what they need the pipeline to be updated for.
No, thank you, John, and Gary as well. And in the end, if you look at all the noise out there around technology and pipelines and sales in general, in the end, what I'm hearing are, hey, have some correct reports, coach to it, keep it simple. I mean, not common sense solutions or advice on how to do this, which is what I would agree. I
But
agree with you. That's what
I'll tell you something, Mark. CRM implementations, I would say, as projects have got quite a high failure rate. They don't fail for technology reasons. The technology is robust.
Right.
And the word fail is misconstrued. They fail to deliver the benefits that were expected at the time that the software was purchased. But they rarely fail for technology reasons. They
Right.
fail for other reasons. They fail for process reasons and for people management reasons.
Great point. Well, I would like to thank Gary and John for spending some time with me this morning or this afternoon for Gary. Again, this is Mark Ondash, and look for my upcoming mini webinar on sales methodology for sales reps. And more importantly, if you want to reach out to my guests and you have questions about sales pipeline, right? Please get a hold of, I'll provide some information again once this is complete. So you can reach out to John and or Gary with questions on that, because obviously they're great resources. And again, I want to thank both of them for spending some time with me today. And at this point, I want to say this is Mark, and thanks so much for showing up. We appreciate it.
Thank you.